Well, do you recognize this? This is a cylinder head intake and exhaust on top of a 4-liter. Took a long time, but it's on there. I'm happy. Literally just dropped it on. See the chain and the hoist? It's literally just now dropped on. Now, a couple things I learned. My guide studs that I made didn't work. And the reason they didn't work in this particular case is because when you drop the cylinder head in, the back of the head has to be a lot lower. First of all, that rear bolt will be stuck up underneath that metal shelf and kind of hitting it. And you just got to kind of bring it down from the back to the front like that. And because it's angled, it won't slide over those studs, so I couldn't use them. So what I did is, as I got the head down to about 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch above the block, I dropped in a head bolt. It's only screwed in a couple turns. I dropped another long head bolt here. This is the incorrect place for it. But to get the engine in place, the head in place, and keep the gasket from sliding around, there's no pins, there's no guide pins of any kind on this block or the head, so you can move the head gasket all over the place. So this bolt and this bolt went in and totally lined everything up. It was great. I was really happy. You get it down, you wiggle it around, and while you're wiggling it, you turn it until you feel it screw in, just a couple turns. And then you slowly keep dropping it until it's in place. You grab it by the intake, wiggle it, make sure everything is what appears to be level, and then you can try and turn these by hand, and if you can, you know your head's in great alignment. So you take 2 of the long bolts that go down this side, you put one there in the front corner, and one, 2, 3, the 4th hole on that side, you drop that in, and man, that made a huge difference. A couple other things is I left part of the EGR off to help clear the injector rail. Use baling wire to hold all your stuff out of the way, or if you can get yours off, take the rail clear off, because it did bind on this mount here and I had to keep screwing with it. So if it's not a huge deal to take yours off, take it off is my recommendation. Let's see. The hoses and stuff kind of get in the way, so you got to work your way down. And this is where this bracket really came in handy. Because everything's balanced this way and that way perfectly, I could use one hand to get the head where I wanted it, the angle I wanted it, and the other hand to operate the hoist. I didn't even think about that until I had to do it. So I'm going to say that this bracket is a total score. It's worth making one. Some of you guys are big and strong, don't care, you'll slap it on here, but you don't want to slide your head gasket around, and these are expensive Felpro gaskets, and I just didn't want to screw it up. So it went down perfect. I had compressed air, I blew out all the holes first, wiped the bottom surface of the head even though it was wrapped in plastic, inspected everything with my eye, and then dropped this bad boy in place. The only thing I had to do different on the hoist is you'll see I had it clear out in the last position, so this part is extended as absolutely far as possible. The problem is it made it harder to reach the handle. So I would put it like in the 2nd position, put it right here so you get a little bit closer, and that way when you're doing this by yourself you can drop it on and raise and lower it, you can reach it. That's the bottom line. I'm 6 foot tall, so if I have a 6 foot wingspan, maybe you can't reach it. But I think that's worth it. I would put that in one more notch, and I think it would be easier to do. This was a lot of work by myself, but it was worth it. A few days ago, the other thing you can't see is there's got brand new lifters in it. HT2011. I'll think of the brand name in a minute. Got it from Summit Racing. $4 a piece plus $10 for shipping. It's a very common lifter. It goes on big block Mopars. It goes in this vehicle. It goes in the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. It goes everywhere. How did I get them out? Lots of suggestions. Here's what worked. See if I can find it. See the Sharpie marking right there? Let's see, right, where are we? Okay, right next to Made in USA. This right down here, the mushroomed head of this punch, the mushroom part, sticks out exactly far enough to grab the top groove of the lifter. So I put this down, move it over, grab the top groove. It's not just going to pull out in a lot of engines. This has got 192,000 miles on it. You had to work it up, 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 up to kind of get the varnish to loosen up. And then it'll come out. Sometimes, most of the time it'll fall off of this, and then it'll be laying there, and then you just take your long needle nose pliers and grab them and pull it out. Mine weren't terribly long, but they were long enough to grab the lifter and pull it out. I did save all the lifters because they worked fine. Who knows, might need it in the future for something, so I put them in the boxes that the new ones came in. I numbered them from front to back, 1 through 12, so I know where they came out of. I did pump them up with oil. The motor oil I'm going to use in this thing, I pumped them up using one of the push rods. You can look that up. Trying not to bore everybody to death, so I'll let you look that part up. Anyway, so this was a great tool. I didn't know it would work until I couldn't get them out. And it worked like a charm. Now, putting them back in. Can't get them in with that tool because they won't stay. But a light duty magnet, telescoping magnet, will work great. It's enough to hold on to it, but it's not enough to become a pain in your butt. Once you put it down and it hits the top of the bore, the lifter bore down in the block there, you just take it and you wiggle it around, all of a sudden, phoop, it'll drop right in. And then you just slide it sideways and it lets go of the lifter and you're on to the next one. If you have a super strong magnet, you'll never get it off the lifter. That's a pain in the butt. So it turns out that a weak, small telescoping magnet that you can get all over the place, or I even have one that's an antenna off an old, like an AM radio. Well, no, it must not have, well, I don't know, it looked like an antenna because it had a screw fitting in the end, but it had a magnet, which antennas don't. Okay, rambling on. Anyway, a small magnet is very helpful putting them back in. This was great. I didn't know I was going to need it until I needed it. So these two tools made the lifter installation just massively simpler. So it's got 12 new lifters. They're all pumped up with oil and coated with oil, obviously. Let's see, what else? You've seen this before. Head bolt from the junkyard. Cleaned it up. Took my angle grinder, cut a couple slots in it. Took the cordless driver and ran it into each hole before the head went on. This happened, many videos ago, and it cleaned the holes out really well. The slots trap dirt, but they also allow, as you push this in the hole, it compresses the air in the hole, and it shot dust and dirt out past these grooves. So it cleans the grooves way better than a tap would. So whoever came up with this idea, probably 1,000 years ago, this is excellent. I would put this in a toolbox and call it a tool. Anything else that I learned while putting this in today? Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. I think if I had to do this again, knowing what I know now, with the oil pan being a total disaster, taking me forever to get it apart and stuff, getting it off, cleaning all the crap off. If it's an original oil pan, original gasket, pull the motor. I'm serious, just pull the stupid motor out. It's a little more work, but you'll have just about zero frustration. Drop it on an engine stand, and on these Jeeps, it's really cool. You can take the whole front end here and the radiator and everything, you can take this off. This is completely gone. The grill's gone. You can pull the motor right out the front. I'm telling you, it's worth it. When I ever have to do this again, I'm pulling the motor. The oil pan took me literally 4 weeks to get the oil pan off, and then scrubbed the surfaces clean of that 30-year-old gasket that was made out of, titanium. I don't know what that shit was made out of, but I couldn't get it off. So anyway, I would, if I did this over, pull the motor. Not everybody agrees with that. A lot of you guys are young and strong and, bully your way through it, but Every couple of weeks, somebody says, how do you get the oil pan off? Because it's a serious pain in the ass, especially if it's an original. And even if it's not, you still got to get the axle out of the way and blah, blah, blah. So you don't have to do any of that if the motor's not in the Jeep. I would do it. Go rent an engine stand, go rent a hoist, and do it that way. You will have greater success. All right, well, I don't know if there's anything else I'm forgetting. I tried to show you the great tools I kind of sort of came up with. The one thing I left out was our wonderful O2 sensor. I just didn't want to break it off. This thing's brand new, and I just didn't want to snap it off. It wasn't real tight down there, but it was tight enough, and this is just money I don't need to spend. So I took it off. Yeah, it's a little more of a pain to get under there and put in, but it's not huge. This thing's clear off the ground. There's no tires in the way. So, you know, you can get under there and do that. So that's okay. Just happy to get it off. So now I'm going to unbolt the bracket, put the bolts in, and tomorrow when I got more energy, I will take and tighten everything down. My plan is to take a cordless driver, a 1/4 inch cordless driver, and I use the other tool I used, and I showed you guys. That's not just a 5/8 socket, that's a spark plug socket. So when you try to do that rear bolt back there, this is the shortest socket you can get in all of humanity that will fully engage the bolt and fully engage your torque wrench. Because once you drop it on, you can get it mostly torqued by just dropping a wrench on here and reefing it, and then the final stage is torquing it. This is really helpful to get it off. It'll be really helpful putting it back on. So use a 5/8 spark plug socket. It will save you no end of hassle. Again, if you pulled the engine out, you wouldn't have that problem. So anyway, is that it? Any other special tools or tricks I used? No, I don't think so. I think we're good to go. This thing's it's not bolted on, it's just sitting there, but it's tight. And if it was sitting on a piece of wire or something, when you wiggle it, it would go clunk clunk. It's not. It's loose. It's not got any tension on it whatsoever. And if I had, what I want to do since this thing's been fully apart is I'm going to take the factory injectors, run it, make sure it runs as good as it did before. It should run a lot better actually with a valve job. Then I'll pull that out and stick injectors on. Because if you buy a set of used injectors and you have a bad one, you don't know if it's one of the injectors or something you did when the engine was way far apart. So that's the choice I'm making. It's more work, which isn't a good idea for me, but it's better for the reliability. I got to get all the carbon off these stupid things. They were carboned up big time, just like the intake was. And that's usually an oil issue. Hooking that PVC line up and all that, I've got to figure out how to do a better job of that, because getting oil, the intake runners were just caked with oil, and so was the intake, and so are the injectors. That's just bullshit. You know, you don't need that kind of thing over time. Engines wear on their own just as, you know, they normally do. You don't need any help wearing them faster. My estimation with new rod bearings, new lifters, and a valve job, I'm sure this engine can go another 100,000. In fact, I've done this so many times before, I know it'll go 100,000. The question at 192K is, will the transmission hold up? It'll automatic, so we'll find out. Anyway, I'm rambling. I just don't want to leave anything out. This was kind of a pain in the butt, but it's done. I did put the housing on here because I needed to flatten it with the files. Remember that video? I did that. It made actually a pretty decent handle, and it didn't really get in the way of the shroud here too bad. But anyway, it's beautiful. I like it. All right, I'm done. I gotta go eat. See you, bye.